The 5 of them quickly ran back to their pack houses, shifted back to human form, and tried to sleep for the rest of the time they had before morning. Leo was especially thankful that Wednesdays were half days. They had instruction in the morning, and after lunch were able to go to the library to study or research as needed, or even exercise. They were required to check in to do one or the other, but it was a nice break in the middle of the week, considering that classes ran 2 hours each on average. Leo was happy that Erin wasn't in any of his classes today. He wasn't sure if he could face her. He was the first to arrive at the workout complex and signed in with an attendant. He had already changed to workout clothing after classes, so had no need for the locker rooms. He was finally alone for a little while. Now was a good time to finally reject Erin as his mate so he could get on with his life.
I, Leon Ravenwing.
The door to this section of the complex opened, and there she was.
What the hell, Celine? Why do you keep doing this to me?
He must have growled because she jumped a little. She narrowed her eyes at him and went to the opposite side of the room to begin stretching.
What the hell is that asshole's problem? Pissy that I dared to enter the room? Fuck him. I can see why Uncle Jacob warned me about werewolves.
She made her way to a nearby bench and sat down to undo the straps to her leg brace. It was better to exercise without it on. She set it on the bench next to her, along with a duffel bag, and moved to the floor, where she began to stretch. She felt the werewolf's eyes on her, and it made her uncomfortable, but she wasn't going to stop just because he was there. Leo saw that it was much more difficult for Erin to move around without the brace. She was dressed in a tank top and spandex pants, with a short pair of shorts over them. He could see the scars around her shoulder and caught himself wondering where they came from. He even caught himself admiring the shape of her. She moved over to the pull-up bar. It was taller than her. She would have to jump to reach it. He got up to offer help, but stopped when she raised her hands, stood on her right leg like a flamingo, and then leapt up to grab it. To jumble his intention to help, he moved to another machine and began using it. She went to get down after doing a few sets of pull-ups, and he stood up, expecting she may need help, but she just scooted over to one of the sides, put her arm and left leg around the pole and slid down, landing on her right foot. He was becoming impressed with her. He was sure now that the 3 interruptions he had in attempting to reject her were Celine's interference. He decided to trust the moon goddess for now and see where this led. He was still standing there staring at her.
Take a picture. It lasts longer.
Her face was hard. She didn't trust any werewolf's intents now, and it made Leo sad.
I was just impressed. I was going to offer to help you down, but you beat me to it.
He confessed.
Sure.
She replied in a tone that made him aware that she did not believe his good intent. She turned and picked up her cane and limped heavily to a leg lift machine. She had to put it on the lowest weight setting. He moved over to stand opposite her and use the free weights. She rolled her eyes.
Thinks he can intimidate me?
She began using the machine. She did this for her left leg to help strengthen it.
How did it happen?
He asked softly. Rumors had started already that a werewolf had attacked her, and that's why it never healed. Others said it was a vampire or a hunter.
Why do you care?
She didn't want to have a conversation with a werewolf after last night, no matter how cute he was.
I don't even know your name.
She scoffed. He was wearing loose linen pants and a loose linen pullover shirt. It didn't have buttons, but did have a slit down from the neck for a few inches. She noticed that most of the werewolves dressed this way. Some were in jeans and t-shirts like normal people, but most seemed to dress in this fashion. Usually, the ones that dressed like this wore sandals, but he was wearing gym shoes as was required here. His hair was a sandy brown and hung down to his shoulders with feathers and other oddities braided into his hair. Like most of the senior boys, he had a scruffy beard. They didn't keep any lines neat, but did keep them trimmed fairly close. His eyes were a mesmerizing deep green.
My name is Leo Ravenwing. I am asking because I am trying to make conversation.
He replied politely.
What if it's too late now? What if she is unable to trust me at all?
The scent of her calmed him.
It was a car accident. My retina became damaged beyond fixing when it detached. My shoulder and arm were broken in several places, and my femur was shattered. They had to do a hip and knee replacement. The accident put me in a coma for 2.5 months, during which I awakened as a mage. So now it's impossible to heal with magic. I can only do what I can to strengthen it.
Will you be able to walk without assistance again?
She narrowed her eyes a little at him.
He was actually asking, why? I may one day be able to walk without the brace, but we believe I will always need the cane.
He nodded.
Here. You should use this machine over here. It will allow you to utilize more muscle groups rather than just isolating your quadricep like that one does.
He led her over to a machine that would have her stand upright. A band would be strapped to her ankle, and she could lift her leg and then push down to raise the weight. He showed her how it would work and where to hold onto the machine to steady herself, and then put the strap on her ankle for her. After she did it a few times, and they adjusted the weight, he nodded in satisfaction and sat down on a butterfly press machine nearby to ensure she didn't need any assistance.
Thank you,
She finally said. It made him smile. After a few hours of working out on various machines, Erin made her way back to her brace. She strapped it back on and grabbed her duffel bag as she began heading out. She was limping a lot heavier than normal. Leo was torn, but he eventually caught up to her and began walking next to her. She looked over at him oddly, her eyes asking the question of why he was walking with her.
It's a long walk back to your dorm, and you are walking poorly. I am ensuring you make it back without falling. Or to be here if you need someone to lean on.
I'll be fine.
She was still weary of him, and considering the last few days for her, he couldn't blame her. He had finally gotten to talk to her, and for that, he was very happy. It had made him decide that maybe Celine had been right to make her his mate. He would have to be very careful. She had been very closed off from him, and it would be very easy to chase her away still. Thursday saw Erin and Leo sharing another class. This was a survival class. It was similar to what girls and Boy Scouts would have in their meetings, except it was to a much higher degree. It taught them to identify herbs in the wild, make a fire in a multitude of ways without magic, and to hunt. These were all done without magic, so that if a mage became magically drained or was with non-mages, they wouldn't be helpless. This was a class that the werewolves tended to be better at, but Leo was surprised to see that Erin did well with the class too. He didn't know that both of her parents had taught high school science, just at different schools and not the one that Erin attended. During the summer, they had frequently gone camping. She may have never hunted a deer, but she did know how to gut and grill a fish. Her dad had loved fishing, and it had been some quality daddy-daughter time for them. Throughout the year, they would be tested on various survival skills, and they would have to work with a partner. This was another class they carefully kept the mage and werewolf students in equal numbers. They had to pick their partner for the whole year in today's class. The werewolves were avoiding to even look at her as mages, and wers were pairing up. Leo grinned as he walked up to Erin.
Will you be my partner?
There was a bitter grimace that she would have to have a werewolf partner to begin with, but she nodded. This would mean that they would end up spending quite a bit of time together. The thought of it made Leo grin. The room was set up with lab table-like seating, so it was 2 to a table. He moved his backpack to sit with her at the table she had been at. This class would alternate between classroom instruction and fieldwork. The midterm was that each pair would be dropped into a random area of North America. It could be a desert, a canyon, a mountainside, the plains, a forest, or even a jungle. Anywhere in North America was possible. The goal was to make it to a payphone and call a specific number, and they would be directed to the nearest portal to return to school. They would only be able to pass if they did this within 1 week. If they were any longer, it was a failing grade. They would be dropped in a completely different place for the final. During those tests, they would be able to use any of their gifts, but running out of magical energy for both partners was a real thing, so they needed to be able to forage, hunt, and find drinkable water. They would have the opportunity to have practice runs in the woods with their partners so that they could practice working together and learn each other's limitations. This was now Leo's favorite class. Friday was uneventful, and Erin had a class each with Amy and Leo. The weekends were free for the students to catch up on classwork or study or otherwise socialize. Erin decided that Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays would be good days to get in workouts. She got dressed in workout clothing and grabbed her workout duffel bag. This bag is where she kept a plastic reusable water bottle and her pain ointment, as well as a small towel to wipe away any sweat. When she arrived, there were a lot of werewolves there too. She was immediately uncomfortable, but refused to let them chase her out of this place. Besides, her leg needed this place in order to get better. Like before, she sat down on a bench and removed the brace and then moved to the floor to begin stretching out. At first, when she went to choose a machine, one of the werewolves would get to it first to be petty. Now, when mages of different paths become uncomfortable or angry, things tend to happen around them. When mighty ones get angry, for example, the lights will begin to flash, and bulbs can even break. When a necromancer gets angry or upset, the opposite happens. The lights seem to dim, and shadows seem to gather. This is what began to happen. The werewolves all began to notice that the room seemed darker, even though the sun shone through the glass of the windows. When Erin was able to utilize one of the machines, they noticed that it got lighter in the room, and when they blocked her, it got darker. It was soon obvious that this was from her, and it spooked them a little bit. The story had gotten around to the pack houses that she had immobilized 5 wolves on her own, and it did make them curious about her as well. They eventually left her alone, tired of their game, and after about an hour, Leo came in to work out. Several of the guys came up and greeted him, slapped him on the back companionably, or high-fived him. He, of course, had no problems in getting to use a machine. She chuckled quietly, but bitterly. She continued to work out until her hip began to ache. She went back to the bench with her duffel bag and pulled out the pain ointment. She began by rubbing it onto her shoulder, which had a lesser ache, and then she put some onto her hip and rubbed beneath the clothing to rub it in. Leo was working out nearby and saw what she was doing.
Are you okay?
Just ache a little more today. It's my pain relief ointment.
She held it out to him to sniff. He stood up and walked over to take it. He sniffed.
More of your belladonna?
He grinned.
There is belladonna in it, but it's not all. It's an old family recipe.
He handed it back to her, and she added more of it to her hip.
The guys were telling me the game they were playing on you when you first arrived. They won't do it again.
Why is that? You their alpha or something?
Alpha. Me. At nearly 18 years old. Are you crazy? Alphas are raised by the Council of Elders of a pack. Alphas are physically strong, sure, but they must also be mentally strong and have proven themselves for many years. Most alphas don't become so until they are in their 40s or 50s.
He chuckled.
I asked them not to because you are my survival class teammate, and my teammate needs the opportunity to strengthen herself to the best of her ability.
He smiled.
Will you be okay to travel by yourself?
I'll be fine.
She still didn't understand him. He came across as one of those nice guys, except nice guys were never really nice. They only ever wanted to get something out of you. He seemed to sense her discomfort, so let it drop.
Okay, I was thinking of using the pool tomorrow. They have water weights too, if you're interested in trying something different.
I'll think about it.
She finished putting her leg brace back on and left, leaning heavily on her cane again. Leo was worried, but chose to abide by her wishes. He hoped he would see her tomorrow.
Hey everyone, hope you loved the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe for more awesome sci-fi content. You can also support us by hitting the thanks button at the bottom of the video. Your generosity goes a long way. Every bit helps us bring you more stories from the stars. Thanks a bunch.